Hello and welcome back to something a little bit different this time. Um, this isn't a Let's Play, this is more about a channel context. Um, I was on one of the subreddit, it happened to be the Fire Emblem subreddit, and somebody a while ago, I think there's a bit of an obsession there with tier list making. You know, the concept you have something like this and you uh, group your rate things into tiers. And I thought, seeing as this is a channel that covers primarily retro RPGs, but also, that we do some, may well cover some newer ones as well. I thought it might be fun to go through the RPGs that I've played and to see where I myself would rank these. It's yeah, it's something that interests me, and I think if you're watching this, it might give you a feel for where my tastes align with your own, the sort of points I'm making, and it's also it's always good fun to do something like this because inevitably we all get a little bit salty when we find the games we love lower down the list. Um, when it comes to RPGs, people have their own definitions. It's what constitutes an RPG. I think more than any other genre in video games, that is the I suppose ours is the genre that agonizes over its criteria the most. So the definition that I am working with here is a game focused on a single player's development of a character or a small selection of characters where the player's success owes more to mechanical understanding than dexterous inputs, and in-game tools for success are numeric and incremental in nature. So to break that down basically by what we are meaning to exclude, this is a single player's development, so we're not looking at Momorpicas or otherwise. There are some games here that have multiplayer options, but I think it would be, they're all unquestionably single player games at their core. It is sort of character focused. I laboured on this a little bit. I thought about whether I wanted to sort of specify persons or anthropomorphic entities. I really wanted to drill down on that next one, that the player success will owe more to mechanical understanding and the incremental nature of success. So to that end, like two very obvious exclusions will be Souls-likes, the From Software games, which are quite clearly, something where skill matters more than your level. And I actually would include Witcher 2 and Witcher 3 in that. I think like those are, again, I remember watching, put inverted commas, substandard Michael absolutely rinse Witcher 3 on its hardest difficulty setting at a very low level. And it was like perfectly clear that if you understand the mechanics, not the mechanics, if you understand or you're capable of winning the fights dexterously, then victory is yours. So yeah, there are one or two sort of edge cases in this. I like to leave it a little bit woolly because sometimes there can be RPGs that we sort of know are just feel like RPGs, but maybe hard definitions don't sort of let them in easily. I'm trying to think. I suppose possibly the best example that I've got here is something like Disco Elysium, which is it? Well, maybe it's not a good example. We'll see. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, perhaps that's a better one because that is really creeping in to camp scale. I can see if some people will be like, well, how can you include Bloodlines if you're not including Witcher? I just think that there's ways in Bloodlines to navigate things that are more to do with your level and attributes than they are to do with your own skill. I was not very skillful and was quite capable of brute forcing that game back in the day. So yeah, the other thing that is conspicuous by its absence in this is a Tim Kaneism. I mention Tim Kaine a lot, but I really do. I like his content and I like his games. For Tim Kaine, a core part of an RPG is that you create your character. And that is not a core part of my definition of an RPG. I think, and you'll see in this that like a good 50%, but a lot of these games are JRPGs or games that are sort of inspired by JRPGs, where you are very much playing a pre-existing character. I'm more than happy that Tim wants to exclude on that grounds, because the genre where you self-create characters is very important. I'd be, many of the games in fact, all of the games I've covered in the channel, you do this, and I think that's that's really, it's definitely our way of doing the RPG, but you can't come to me and say Final Fantasy VII isn't an RPG. It's just not going to hold up to my definition. And I think that there's more than enough room in the genre for player created main characters, like Western RPGs, if you want to call it that, and JRPGs, and then every spot in between. So the way I thought I'd do it, I've got this list. I've ranked them S. Just make it S. Just there we go. Just that bit brighter. S being the top, and then coming down from here. And rather than picking them in any specific order, I thought I'd just do it like a wheel spin. So you'll see some. There's quite a few things to go through on this. The other criteria for this, like how much I've played the game. Not all of these games, by a long stretch, have I completed. I think I've seen it said on Reddit by many communities where it's a community who are a fan of that game, that you can't you shouldn't judge a game unless you've completed it in full, and that's just ridiculous. Of course you can judge a game before you have experienced every last inch of it. I understand why fans of games feel that way, but every part of the game is is important in its context, and the context of the first half matters probably more than anywhere else. So a classic example that isn't on this list because I haven't played it, I can't imagine I ever will play it, Final Fantasy 13 famously gets a bit better about 30 hours in, which who's going to make it through the first 30 hours? I haven't played that, as I say, so it won't be then. Some of these games I will have, as a result, hundreds of hours in, and some of the games I will have. I don't think I'm doing anything here that I've got less than 5 hours in. I think that really is a bit stingy. I would say in my first sort of idea of this, there were things like Phantom Brave and I'm trying to think what else was there. There's been one or two games that were like, I think I need to play it a little bit more than the like 2 or 3 hours. Witcher 1 I would have included in this, but like it was a long time ago, and it really didn't grab me. So we're going to spin the wheel. We're going to see what comes up, and we'll place them accordingly. There is on here. I've just used a pre-existing one. Thank you very much to whoever made. Does it have a name for it? Comprehensive RPG list, 500 plus titles. This is going to be a nightmare to navigate because we're not short of them. Don't know who did that. Apologies. If you see this and you're like, that's mine, then put a message in the comments. So we'll open up with. I'm just going to use this as an excuse to talk about. Ooh, Morrowind. So Morrowind was the. It was basically an RPG that was launched and heavily supported through the Xbox, the original Xbox when that was new, and the Elder Scrolls had been around for a while. I was aware of Daggerfall, which is the second one, I think. I'm not sure about Elder Scrolls 1. Daggerfall didn't strike me back in the day as being terribly popular. When the Elder Scrolls really kicked off, it was with Morrowind, and to be honest, they've got more successful with each. Obviously, Oblivion later, and then Skyrim. So yeah, to me, it owed a lot of success to. To the fact that it had this major console release, and it was one of the opening games on that console. Morrowind, when we talk about the silver age of computer role-playing games, I have always tended to regard Morrowind as the game that killed that off. I have heard some really good, strong arguments that, in fact, it's Star Wars: Knights of the Old Republic was the game that killed off the Silver Age. But definitely, there's a sense of that we made a transition from mouse-based, sort of tactical party based RPGs, the Baldur's Gates, if you call Fallout strictly party member, but certainly isometric and mouse-based, Icewind Dale, Arcanum, Planescape Torment, so on, into something that was more console-based and more seeking mass appeal. Morrowind and the Elder Scrolls generally, it's they went down a path, an attempt to an immersion, where being able to walk everywhere and see everything. I mean, I rather unkindly at the time called them walking simulators. Well, say unkindly. I might stand by that definition. You could go anywhere in them. I mean, if you're playing this, I'm sure you're aware of at least one of these Elder Scrolls 3 through 5. To me, Morrowind, there's a personal bitterness towards it because it killed off a genre that I had more love for. As a game, I enjoyed many aspects of Morrowind. It's I definitely, I had 100 hours back in it. In the day I've completed it. I think the problems with Morrowind was that it doesn't really. To me, it's not really a game that takes flight. It's a bit of a plodder. The most interesting things that happen in Morrowind are when you get better gear the dialogue and the characters and the writings, like it's just not for me. It's not personal story based. It's more about unless you're reading all the like ancillary text log stuff, going through all the books. But that at that point, like you've just written a story and just writing it down. You're not using video games as a medium to tell a story. And yeah, there were some power fantasies in it. A theme part of this, any game on this list where you want to level up, so you leave the computer running and do something else, which Morrowind was like absolutely, the amount of leveling up that I did in that game while I wasn't playing it, because I just like level up armor by leaving myself fighting a weak thing and then just go to bed, and then have like both my armor skill that I started with and my unarmored like overnight, like maxed out overnight. Basically, you got like a ring of regeneration, and you can just heal yourself faster than they can hit you. And there was a lot of Morrowind that was, even at the time, even in a more optimistic version of me, was just painful trudging. Like when I think about the right hand side, the east side of the map, just walking, so like some of them were like accompanying quests, and I just didn't really feel much for the world. Where would I put? Is Morrowind a bad RPG? No, it's good at what it does, and I did get some enjoyment out of it. I've got, like I say, 100 hours in, so I can't be too low here. In fact, Morrowind, where are we? Right, it's going to be a nightmare. I don't know if you can see my cursor with this, but I'm going to pop it. I'm going to pop it in C tier, I think, for now. Oh, I've not got an E. Excuse me. Right. I was thinking something looked a bit off there. Right, let's do that. And we will do that and that. Sorry, this is how professional this is. Yeah, okay, fine. So yeah, I'm going to put it there. I'm going to reserve the right with these to move them up and down, because once you get like a sort of flavour for them and you see them, you're like, okay, well maybe that's not the one that just goes there. But for me, like Morrowind, even though there's a big part of me that wants to say like it's like a lower mediocre, Morrowind was all right. It just there's a lot of bitterness in me, so I'll give it its due. It can have its C rating. See what else we've got in store for us. The Banner Saga. So the Banner Saga was a more recent kind of, well, I say more recent. It's more recent by the standards of my channel and the games I play. I think it's probably about 10 years old now. Where you took a tribe of like pseudo Vikings, and you had to lead them across a map and a wasteland. It had like, it was like tactical sort of combat in a kind of Fire Emblem-y way. But the Banner Saga's unique thing was like the more damage things had taken, the less damage they did. So you were actually physically wounded by wounds. To be honest with you, I didn't really get on with it. I know a lot of people like it, and it feels really bad to dogpile like on an indie RPG coming at like something like it's got a new idea, it's got like a solid theme, the writing well, the writing maybe wasn't the strongest point, but like it, it was there. It had a solid. You see, even when I look at things, I was going to say a solid art style. It's not a good art style. It's just kind of solid. Um, and I just thought that like both the maps and the mechanic of things doing less damage when they were injured, like maybe it's because I didn't adapt to that very well, but it just seemed rather like it didn't seem terribly dramatic. I know that might sound like, like surely it's more dramatic if you get like injured and that affects your ability to survive. It's like you'd say so, but you're kind of in this realm of ever decreasing numbers. Things creep down at the end, and the other thing, I mean, I also recall it just being a little bit plodding with that. Um, like I think that even RPGs, games generally should be, like I think big flair hits, charging in and saving the day, is better than winning the war of attrition. Certainly thematically. So like it's like something that will it'll crop up quite a few times in this, and it crops up a lot when I'm discussing anything on this. Realism is entirely overrated. Like, first make a game and then worry about any sort of realistic implications. It's like the whole thing with like something like Star Wars, or I don't like to mention it that often, and yet I seem to mention it all the bloody time, like Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings or any fantasy. Like, just as long as you set the boundaries of what the world does early on, and you stick to that, then it feels realistic, even if it is ridiculous, because you're sticking to the confines of the world. I just don't think it was a very good idea, the Banner Saga. I am going to... Is it even on here, actually? Oh, there it is. I think. Is that... Oh, it looks like Banner Saga 2. Oh, they got 3 of them. Gosh. Okay. Well, evidently people liked it more than me. I'm going to put it here. It just wasn't wasn't a game that really grabbed me. What's next? Yeah, so Final Fantasy VII. When we talking about Final Fantasy VII, this refers to the PlayStation game in 1997 I think it's 97, in the context of itself. So we're not interested in any of the spin-offs, whether they be by Squaresoft, like, which is basically that Chocobo racing thing. Whether it's Squaresoft, Square Enix, whoever, we're not dealing in the remake or the rebirth. We are talking about the original game. Final Fantasy VII is... I played this at the time, and I've also played it more recently. And in the COVID lockdown, I replayed it. And Final Fantasy VII is a game of its time. It's when I promote Fallout 1 and 2 and Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, I would say that they managed to be quite timeless. I mean, that's a silly thing to say, because obviously there's a lot of things that have changed in the way that we make games, and particularly how we make tutorials in the time since. But they don't necessarily feel dated. And a lot of the time, you find that with games that like are games that are the cutting edge at the time, often don't age as well as games that were not the cutting edge. The other thing that I say a lot, and like I normally talk about it in the context of one of my all-time favorite games, which is Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. Like, it's very hard to know how good if you come and play Ocarina of Time now. I mean, firstly, like, good luck if you haven't got like some ridiculous N64 controller, because the key bindings are bonkers. But more than that, like, a lot of the things that made Ocarina unbelievably good at the time have kind of just become standard. You know, like just about everything from like not just Breath of the Wild, but like from like The Witcher 3 and like your Shadows of War, like so many things that like in the open world sandbox that they do, like only do it because Ocarina of Time did it, and did it so well. Just like fishing as a minigame, which is now just like the most standard thing in the world, but like, you know, it blew our minds back in the day. And with Final Fantasy VII, like what blew our minds was not. I mean, in part, I mean, it was its presentation and graphics compared to what had been before. Yeah, it was a big thing. Like, that was cutting edge. There's no question of that. But it also brought character-driven storytelling into video games. Of course, there had been character-driven storytelling in in other games before, but not. Firstly, I don't think you'll find many games that can before Final Fantasy VII that can come close to the sheer lines of dialogue. I really think that would be a struggle. There's a lot of talking in that game. It also brought like to certainly myself in Europe, and I would imagine to many folks in the North America, or North and South America as well. It brought a lot of very Japanese style storytelling in. We talk about when I talk about storytelling or character-driven development, like the Japanese seem to have much more of a focus on like the temporal aspect. Normally, when in a lot of, I'm just going to call it Western storytelling, you will have an event, and you will follow that character through that event. If we take, I was going to say Star Wars, but maybe Star Wars isn't even the best example, because it's very heavily inspired by that. But like, maybe let's say Lord of the Rings, because that's great. We, in the plot of Lord of the Rings, we follow Frodo, Aragorn, like through that period of the Third Age, and sometimes, like Aragorn particularly, will talk about things that happened to him previously, but it's very much dealt with in the first person, like as in him, or rather, it's not dealt with in the first person. He's describing it in the modern sense, whereas with Final Fantasy VII, a lot of this is dipping into timelines. What happened before? The characters in Final Fantasy VII, compared to any game that I'm aware of previously, that was released prior to that, they are by far and away the most three-dimensional. And sometimes it gets on people's nerves. Like, the way you hear it now with all these remakes, I guess younger generations might think, oh, everyone loved Final Fantasy VII back in the day. They really didn't. It was a Marmite game. Some people loved it, some people hated it. But I was one of the ones who loved it. And it's got very, very good storytelling. It uses a combination of sort of cinematic narratives. When you think about like the opening thing to the original Final Fantasy VII, you're coming up like into the Firstly, the zoom out to Midgar is just spectacular, and the zoom back in, and we're talking about like the change of scope and focus there. But even when you're walking up to that first reactor building, and there's just that Shinra logo, and it's just looming overhead, and there's lots of like little cinematic things with that. It's very well done. Is it all good? No. When I replayed it, some of the bits have aged quite a bit. The summons, particularly, like, I don't think I used them because they were, back in the day, I couldn't get enough of them. They were like spectacular, but now, yeah, it all looks a bit dodgy, really. Final Fantasy VII's got some, like, it's not a difficult game if you play it now. I mean, for some weird reason, all the re-releases give you like extra, like, auto limit breaks and things like that. I really don't know why, because it's like it is not a difficult game. But the way it's got like it's got this asynchronous leveling system that's just fantastic. It's integrated with the world, like what's happening with materia, but you've also got your levels there. There's like a real sense of choice and possibility, and tactics into combat. But equally, if you're struggling, it's as simple as just going and grinding, and you can quite quickly get up to a level of being competitive, even if you don't necessarily know what's going on. Final Fantasy VII is probably the most beloved game of all time. There's a reason why we've got all these spin-off sequels, which, like, without getting into the remakes, I guess I'm not going to see eye to eye with a lot of folks on that, but the people who made Final Fantasy VII are not the people who are making Crisis Core, Dirge of Cerberus, Advent Children, remake, Rebirth. It really, to me, shows that there's a very poor level of understanding in the company releasing those games as to what made Final Fantasy VII successful and what made it the most beloved game of all time. Well, say the most beloved game of all time, what do I mean by that? I don't necessarily mean the most popular game of all time, but I challenge, the fact that we've just got all these sequels, there's just the obvious demand for it. Like, people, even before the remake came out, people are still cosplaying as these things, years later. There's still fan fiction, fan art, like it's just, people are obsessed with it. And I don't think people are wrong on this. I think it's an absolute belter. And I am, despite the fact it's a bit easy, despite the fact it hasn't always, some parts of it haven't aged as well as that they could have, I struggle to find another narrative, character-driven story experience that beats it. And for that reason, it's going straight into S. Right, let's remove that. What next? Then, on the other hand, there's this. There's going to be a few Final Fantasies on there, so I have sat through loads of them. Of the ones that are on here, this is the one I have played the least. I would hope that the reasons for this would be fairly obvious. Final Fantasy X, we'll come on to later, was a beloved, again, character-driven, story-based RPG that set out very clear places for its characters and roles in the story, then you have this weird anime spin-off that just sort of it's I find it such a strange thing that like you can I mean I say anime spin-off, it's all bloody anime, but like there are I mean I have to say as I understand it, because I don't think I've ever watched anything like this, but as I understand it from numerous ProZD videos, you get these, and a cursory glance at the Japanese section on Netflix, you get these bizarre spin-off anime things which have got very little to do with the main story from which they are based. And this is what Final Fantasy X-2, the name, Final Fantasy X-2 is based upon. You've got this. I mean, firstly, the premise is not just like bonkers. It's bonkers, but like just cringe at anything. Just like turning. You know, because if you like, the chances are, if you like Final Fantasy X, you probably thought it was quite sad. I'm gonna go there. Like it probably, you know, in terms of the story. I mean, like an emotional story, it probably made you a bit sad, and so to do that, to be, you're like, oh well, you know, our fans feel like that. What they'll want is cheering up by all those characters just being thrown into a different universe and being pop stars. And we'll use a like watered down version of the Final Fantasy V, 5 or 4? Final Fantasy 5, I think. Combat system. And it was just I mean, I didn't get far. It was just tedious. It is, for me, it was just rock bottom. And I think if you're in the realms of, I think, oh god, I'm just looking at it. Is it an E tier? No, it's not an E tier. Is it an F tier? I don't think it's even an F tier. It's going right down to the bottom of G. It was just a travesty, really. Maybe somebody's going to write in and say, oh yes, but when you get 10 hours in, it really picks up. I just can't see it. Like sometimes you know, like the sort of Dark Souls effect of like you play it for a bit, and like for most people when they start playing Dark Souls, well, they put Bloodborne to one side because Bloodborne's a bit more accessible. I guess Elden Ring too, but like Dark Souls 1 or 2, when you start playing that, it's just not fun. But you can kind of see how when you get to grips with it, even there, it's like if I persevere, I'll get something from that. You just can't see it with X2. It's just like more and more misery. Get out of my sight. I wondered if I wanted to include this one. Pathfinder Kingmaker is it's done by Owlcat, who are I think they're based out of Cyprus now, but they are or were a Russian company, and probably de facto still are a Russian company who just release through Cyprus. And at the time of writing, you know, that there's still, you know, the war in Ukraine is going on, and whether or not, I mean, not saying that Owlcat were responsible for the war in Ukraine, and I'm not saying that, you know, we need to, you know, Owlcat need to be doing anything more than anybody else about this. You know, they've just asked not to comment, and that's fair enough. But the point is, if you're not going to boycott, you know, there's nothing else Russian that I use. So if you don't boycott that, then then what are you going to boycott? So you kind of have to put pressure with your wallet there, and so whether or not this is this should be covered, I don't know. Pathfinder Kingmaker was released around about the same time as Pillars of Eternity, which my very brief Let's Play of may have not have gone up by this point. But the point was that this was a game that was inspired by Baldur's Gate 1, Baldur's Gate 2. It uses Pathfinder, which is kind of like an open source Dungeons and Dragons 3.5 version. It is basically just D&D 3.5. And Pathfinder is very expansive. It's got all I say all the classes from Pathfinder. And Pathfinder's got infinite classes, but it's got all the big classes that you'd expect, and quite a few other classes. It takes its sort of role-playing systems from the Pathfinder, from D&D, and it takes its sort of graphical and sort of implementation systems from Baldur's Gate 1 and Baldur's Gate 2. It plays like that. And it's really fucking good. It handles that really well, particularly when you've got sort of other games that are claiming to be inspired, like your Pillars of Eternity, like your Divinity Original Sins. Pathfinder Kingmaker stays true to that cause, and it also it implements in a really nice sort of base party growing system. It basically was, in many respects, where I wanted the genre to go at the end of the Silver Age of role-playing games. I wanted that to become more of a base-driven thing, where we could have more of a growing sense of involvement in the world and a growing sense of scope in the world politics, and that's what Pathfinder does. It does it really well. It's got a gorgeous map. Really, really good job. Downsides with Pathfinder, the writing is what's the word? I'm not being sarcastic. I'm genuinely struggling for how to convey this. It's decent. It's like it feels like when you reading the writing to, especially, it's so hard not to compare it to Pillars of Eternity because it's the same thing. Like with Pillars, the writing, they aim high and miss, whereas in Pathfinder they aim average and hit. It doesn't, but it's kind of, it works. It's not they're not what really takes you out of an experience like that is when you get the sense that the writer's just trying to be more clever than they are, and I really don't get that sense with Pathfinder. It's a basic story, and it does that well. The one thing I would say with Pathfinder, I've got 200 hours in it, didn't complete it. Pathfinder's hard, and I don't generally approve of role-playing games being hard. I think I really did enjoy. There were 2 dungeons in Pathfinder where I got you basically get trapped in them, and you've got limited resources, and if you don't do it with those limited resources, well, you're gonna have to go back to a save 15 hours ago or whatever. And the first one of those I managed to sneak through. That was a good experience. And then the final dungeon, it was just I can't be bothered. Um, I think that like the pacing falls off a little bit, but I've got to say, of those 200 hours, damn, I enjoyed so much of it. So where's it going? Is it even on here? Actually, come to think of it, what does? Because it all depends on what. Paper Mario. Do we not have it? I hate with this because it feels like, firstly, like you'll be. Oh, there we are. You'll be able to see these a lot easier than me. Is it absolute top tier? No, it's not absolute top tier. Is it an A or a B? The problem with Pathfinder, I mean, the fact that I didn't complete it, and the fact that it's got, you know, the writing just isn't, you know, we're talking like Morrowind tier writing. I'm gonna put it at B. Let's move on. Fallout Tactics. Firstly, is this even on here? Doesn't look like they've included it, and I can't do that. I've not created anything for it, have I? No. Well, we can't put it on, so it's there, but we'll briefly touch on it. So, Fallout Tactics was the third Fallout game. It's a bit of a cash grab from Interplay. I think it's Interplay. Take Fallout, change some of the mechanics, make it into a level-based, like as in like level 1. You know, the first level that you play, then you play the second level, then you play the third level, so on. But also try and have a map, but then make the map not behave like the map on previous games, because you know, that would change your level based thing. Make it sort of like real time or with pause. Make it sort of change with that. Change the appearance of the units within. So make, you know, change the appearance of Deathclaws and super mutants and the art style on that. Like Fallout Tactics, I've completed Fallout Tactics, but I completed it back in the day. I wouldn't complete it now. I'm certainly not, like, very little interest in ever playing it again. If I do, it will be only on this channel to showcase how bad it is. But it's part of this sort of same lesson that's there in Final Fantasy VII, and to a lesser extent with Baldur's Gate games and so on. Like, recognize why your original, why the product that you are selling the license on, or selling your product using a license, why that original thing was good. You know, if, like, with Fallout Tactics, like, I just feel like they could have done an expansion pack for Fallout 2, included very little in. It could have been, you know, relatively mediocre, and I just think that the fans would have got more from that. I really don't understand what they were going with Tactics. It's not the worst Fallout game. Fallout Brotherhood of Steel was a terrible top-down shooter that's definitely not suitable here and is best forgotten. But yeah, I think if I'm, I'd put it here. I'd put it in the eater. But we haven't got to pick from, so we can just ignore that and move on. Fell Seal, Arbiter's Mark. This is like a an indie release from let's say about like maybe like 6 years ago, something like 5 years ago. It's relatively recent, and it basically is a carbon copy of Final Fantasy Tactics. It just takes well, where's it gone? They've got to have it on here, surely. Yeah, there we are. I don't know the origin of it off the top of my head, but it feels like this is a Western game that is heavily inspired, and like really heavily inspired by Final Fantasy Tactics. Kind of like a sort of just a modern reboot of that. It's not even a modern reboot, to be honest. It's kind of just like it's copied Final Fantasy Tactics' homework. You've got a fairly flimsy plot with fairly flimsy characters, but it's mostly just about like grinding up through the classes. The tactical combat is fun. It is a it's a carbon copy really of Final Fantasy Tactics. I've got about 40 hours into it, and then it's just one of those things that like sort of like I think with a lot of games, and especially when you're like into midlife as I am, life can sometimes get in the way of games that aren't brilliant. Brilliant games, you schedule your life around, and then other games, it's just like, yeah. So Fell Seal was not, it's fairly stock and standard. What I would say to its credit, I enjoy it more than Final Fantasy Tactics. I think that the story is better paced and the characters are better with that. I still think like both games descend into a grind. They are about the grind, and there isn't yet. I've never really seen it done well where like the integration of story in these sort of like heavy class. Well, I suppose you could argue Fire Emblem Three Houses doesn't do too badly with it. It's decent. No, we'll keep it down there. But it's a lot of time for it. But it's just limited in scope. It's not an ambitious game. And the other thing with Fell Seal is like, because after 40 hours I hadn't completed it, I have a feeling I was still on the first map. And like if there were 2 maps to that game, like, okay, fair enough. If it turns out there were like 10 maps to that game, then like Jesus Christ, no, I'm not going to like play that through to its conclusion. Like it didn't have that level of shelf life. Oh, there it is. Oh, do I have feelings about this one? Darkest Dungeon. You are on here. So it's a roguelike, I guess. Do we include roguelikes in this? Well, I think it meets our definition. We're following the development of a small selection of characters where mechanical understanding and in-game sort. Yeah, I think that Darkest Dungeon fits in there. Darkest Dungeon, if somehow you've not played it, this was an indie RPG. It must be about 10 years old now. You're basically there's like you're creating a party of people, recruiting various party members from various classes, and going and exploring a Lovecraftian world. Um, it's incredibly heavily stylized, um, and it does so much right. Like it's like the sound is really good. The graphics are incredibly stylized. It uses this sort of like paper doll effect for walking and moving. So it's got this quite sort of janky like animation to it, but it like leans into that so hard, and it just like it's like okay, well, like if you ever want an example of like you're programming a game, and you're like, how can I make more from the little graphics I have with like simple scaling, zooming, and camera movement. And like Darkest Dungeon does it, I think, better than any, um, yeah, any other game. Like the bang for buck in Darkest Dungeon's graphics are fantastic. Really, really does look good. The art design as well, which is not the same as the graphics, but the art design and direction is superb. It's so Lovecraftian. The narrator is perfect because you've got a vocal narrator describing events, but not they, enough. Like there's enough repetition that catchphrases come in, but not so much that it ever becomes irritating. It's almost like a like he's not singing, he's just narrating, but there's almost a musical quality to it. The classes all feel distinct and good. Like the enemies and level design feel great. I love Darkest Dungeon, apart from its Achilles heel, and it has like just an oh, it's so frustrating to me. Like Darkest Dungeon is an absolutely fantastic 40-hour game, but it is just padded within an inch of its life to just be unnecessarily long. Like the, I mean, I think that you have like an abridged. I mean, you can change various things in the options menu now. Like they've made it. I think since I played it, there's a lot more customization you can add in to not do stuff. But like all the enemy bosses, and they're interesting bosses, but you fight them 3 times. Like one at like level 1, one at level 3, and one at level 5. It's just like, why? Why are we doing this? There's like an abridged version of the campaign, which I think I did it in about 90 hours. And like, so the main version must be like 200 hours. It's just like, it just hasn't got that level of depth. And then there's some really, really weird and just bad decisions. Like you have to do the final dungeon, I think it's 3 times. And then you can fight the final boss when you've done like this dungeon 3 times. Firstly, why 3 times? Like, what's being gained there? But there we go. We do that. But the characters that you use when you do a successful run in the final dungeon, you can't use those characters again. And also, if you have to retreat, because it's a roguelike, it's permadeath for all these characters. If you have to retreat in the final dungeon, then you lose one party member automatically at random. And it's just like that should just be on day 1 of game design school. They should ask anybody like, have you ever thought of doing that? And then just if anyone says yes, just expel them immediately. Because like, what is that as an idea? It's just really, really bad, and it like it's soured me. I mean, like if as I say, 40-hour game, Darkest Dungeon certainly here, maybe here, really, really good, but it just drags and it drags. I'm almost tempted to put it there. So much, like, is the drag a problem? I'm going to put it in the Fell Seal school. I'm going to put it in Fell Seal. It's just like that design at the end is just so bad. But the opening 40 hours are so good. You see, like, this is... I'm going to put it in C. I'll leave it in C tip. But, like, this is the difference. Like, your opening 40 hours are good, your last 200 hours are bad, versus your opening 5 hours are bad, who cares about the rest of it? That's Darkest Dungeon. Let's see what else we've got on here. We've got loads to do on here. Maybe this might have to be one that I split. I don't think I'd be going as far as this. Peter Molyneux's Fable. Is it on here? That's the first question. I mean, it's one of these two, isn't it? Fable's fine. It was fun enough. It's one of those things. I mean, Peter Molyneux back in the day, the game developer or designer for it, like he was always the king of like promise the Earth and then like deliver a picture of the Earth. Like, yeah, it also, to be fair, it's sort of, whether or not it even needs to be here is debatable, because of course it's is it more skill based? Well, it's not very skill based. I remember enjoying it. I don't remember anything about it. Having a hammer, hitting things. I remember, like, you get married, but like you might as well have got married to like a, you know, a bloody glass of water for like all the personality that spouse has. You could buy stuff, but it's that. I think I would just D-tier that. I'm not trying to rush through it. There's just really not much to say about Fable. You just have to kind of choke through. Arcanum of Steamworks and Magic Obscura. This is we've not covered this game yet. For the like one of it's one of the Silver Age of Role-Playing games. It is one of the first games that when Tim Kaine left Interplay, having done Fallout and a bit of Fallout 2, he went on and did this with his new company Troika. Arcanum is in actual fact, if anything, the engine it seems closest to, in my opinion, is probably Fallout Tactics rather than anything else. But it's got its own, because you can switch between real time and turn-based. To be honest, like you can switch between real time and turn-based. It's a bad halfway house that. Just kind of pick one, like, and the one when you're playing Arcanum that you should pick is turn-based. It doesn't lend itself very well to real time. But anyway, that's not the point. The point with Arcanum is it is Fallout, but in a sort of Victorian style, like steampunk fantasy world. And you've got there's a lot of nice ideas in it. You basically have this plot where magic and technology are fundamentally incompatible, and you are either leaning towards technology or towards magic, and the fact that like with each increasing piece of one, the other sort of disappears, both in terms of your own ability. So if you're like focused on having like, I don't know, guns and mechanical armor, then you will not be able to cast spells. But also within the world. So the elves who are dependent on magic are basically being crushed by the humans, dwarves, and to a lesser extent orcs, who are all part of this industrializing society. It's got some good quests. The combat is not as good as Fallout. It doesn't have that same punch to it. It just, I think, to be honest, the main reason for that, and we talked about at the end of Fallout 1, the playthrough there, Fallout 1's just got really, really good Foley design and really, really good death animations. And it goes a long way, and Arcanum doesn't quite have that. And I think that eats into it a bit. It's also got like this weird, it's got a really bad bug in it, where, it's not, is it a bug? Just like you as the main player character like draw and the majority of the aggro by virtue of being the main player character, which means that it's just far more advantageous to build a tank than it ever is to build any other build, which really fucking sucks, because there's like a fantastic character creation system and like loads going on there, and it's like, yeah, but you know, I'm going to need to survive. But there's that. It can be a little bit grey at times. I did try and fire it up relatively recently, but I just wasn't in the mood for it. It's there. I still think, I mean, with Arcanum, it's like, it's got so many good ideas. I think I had to up this manually, because whoever did this list of all these RPGs, and they weren't aware of Arcanum, or I'm being blind, which is also possible. Although it sure as hell doesn't look it. But anyway, yeah, it is from the Silver Age. It's kind of in this sort of an inverse of Pathfinder, where it's like a little less fun, but it's got kind of better writing. I think a beta. I'm happy with that for that. We'll remove that. We'll click this. I'll temporarily look and just check the length of this. I think we'll go a little bit longer. What have we got? Yeah. So, yeah. So I'm quite fond of Japan. I've been to Japan. I speak a little bit of Japanese. I wouldn't describe myself as a full-on weeb, but you know, you'll see enough JRPGs on here to say I've got like a passing interest. One of the things that I just will never understand is how Dragon Quest and Enix, I'm pretty sure it's Enix who made Dragon Quest, managed to swallow up Squaresoft, who made the Final Fantasies. It seems bonkers to me. You've got like Dragon Quest VII is released like around about the same time, maybe a few months before Final Fantasy VII, and they're just chalk and cheese. Like Dragon Quest VII is still using like a SNES era graphical front, like even though it's on PlayStation. It doesn't have any of like the in-depth character things. The areas are quite kind of repetitive. It was okay for a bit. I certainly didn't get anywhere near completing it. But it's just so weird to me. Like the Japanese just love Dragon Quest. I mean, the fact that I want to say it was more successful than the Final Fantasies up to this point. And like I say, like the merger between Squaresoft and Enix seem to greatly favour Enix. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know why that's none of it makes any sense from my particular vantage point. Um, can you play these? Oh, by the way, the soundtrack's fucking horrible. Like there's another thing where like I just like I like not only is like Nobuo Uematsu and indeed some of the others who followed him just a much better compositionally than the guy from Dragon Quest, but the guy from Dragon Quest is dead now. Not a very nice man either. So it's just like what, yeah, like that's really bad and leaves a very sour taste in the mouth. Where let's see if we can find it. Like the other thing with these Dragon Quest things is all the covers will look about the same. I think it's that one. I think I'm having to squint a bit here, so I'm sure you are too. Yeah, it wasn't F. I didn't, you know, I got some enjoyment from it, but kind of throw away. Might and Magic 8. I've played. So you've got the Might and Magic series, and you've got the Heroes of Might and Magic series, that are the more successful spin-off that I wouldn't include as RPGs. I'd say you're entering the realms of like 4X. But Might and Magic, the main line, very much are RPGs. I've played a little bit of 6, but not enough to include it here. I've completed 7, or well, yeah, I have completed 7, and I've certainly got to the point where I lose interest in 7, which is quite late on, several times. 8, I have played a lot less of. I've got the magic 5 hours that I use as my barometer. But the thing with 8 is like, you know, the tutorial island will use up a fair chunk of that 5 hours. You might recall, if you've seen my Let's Play of the first, it's only like a 1-page episode. I will return to Might and Magic 7 again. I'll play that. I like Might and Magic 7. It's rough around the edges, but it's a cult game. It's good fun. But Might and Magic 8's slower. Like it's just like it. You know, the phrase, like with Might and Magic 7 and Might and Magic 8, sometimes the phrase less is more applies. Having hyper extended dungeons, which like some people really like that. You know, 6 and 8 do more of these like longer, more sort of plodding puzzle dungeon. I mean, the tutorial dungeon on 8 is, I don't find that fun. I just find that a slog. And then there's this wonderful thing on the previous Might and Magics where like you can create your own party, and it's all about your party composition and how that like complements one another, and these classes having trade-offs. And then it kind of just goes out the window for 8. And you create a main character, but yeah, you create a main character, and then you sort of recruit other party members, and they're all less tangible classes. They're all like rather than you know, like knight, wizard, cleric, or whatever. Things like Minotaur, or I think vampire might be on there, or like, and some of these ideas like are, because you play as well like as an, I don't quite want to say evil, but like you're playing on like from the monster's side, which is it's one of those ideas that sounds really good on paper, But when somebody comes to you and says like, okay, how are we going to do this? I haven't included, by the way, I've noticed on this, Tyranny is not on my list, and Tyranny is another modern game that does this that I've got about 5 hours in. Um, Tyranny, to be fair to it, like really sits down and goes, okay, well, how can we make playing as the bad guys interesting? And Might and Magic 8 doesn't do that. It just sort of gives you that. Some of the mechanics weird. I'm sure I remember the vampire like just takes damage in daylight, which is just like what? I mean, I mean, yeah, fine. That's quote unquote realistic to the like thing, but like why? You know, it just makes it a pain in the ass to play. Um, and then yeah, the way that you're thrown into the world, at least with Might and Magic 7, it kind of just sort of points you in a thing and says kill that. Whereas with 8, it's slower going. I've watched a Let's Play a little bit of 8 to try and spur myself on, and like in order to get a decent class or party composition, you have to just go and do things that like if you didn't have a guide, you just have no idea to do this. Um, So it falls really short for me. Uh, and then also as well like some of the there's another thing about this whole less is more thing, like some of the distance that you have to cover in the tutorial area, the amount of walking that you're doing, and I know like I sort of mentioned Morrowind for this earlier, but at least Morrowind's like the walking, there's stuff around. Like Might and Magic 8, just walking through nothing. Like why? What's this about? You know. They somehow managed to make a ninth game, which was even worse. But no, Might and Magic 8 was not good. It really, I would expect this to be going in bottom tier. But thankfully, Final Fantasy X2 is there to mean it deserves its own tier. Um, yeah. Sorry, I just remembered how bad that Final Fantasy X2 is. But anyway. Right, well, that's Might and Magic 8. What have you got for me next? Ooh. Final Fantasy 10. So I played Final Fantasy X back in the day, and you know, we'll do like a well, go into this disclosure. Um, I bought myself Final Fantasy X when I was going through quite a difficult time, having to prove things about like the you know, death of a father, who died years before, and it was quite a complicated relationship. And so I bought Final Fantasy X to cheer myself up and played that. And I can scarcely imagine a less appropriate game to cheer me up in that moment, in that particular situation, than Final Fantasy X. But I absolutely loved it, and it was fantastic. I Obviously Final Fantasy X not perfect back in the day. Two obvious problems. It's one of the first games in sort of console games to have extensive voice acting. The voice acting isn't always great. You know, famously there's that laughing scene, but like which is a little bit misunderstood. That is, they are doing forced laughter, but even some of the rest of it, it's like the acting. You're limited by how you can do that. The other problem that Final Fantasy X had, even back in the day, even as much as I really enjoyed it, like the trash fights on it, of just this Tidus attacks quick character, and he will be called Tidus, by the way. I'm not like, I don't care who in Japan is telling me his name is Tidus. It is Tidus. But Tidus attacking the quick enemies. Wakka attacks the flying ones. Lulu attacks the magic ones. Like who thought that was a good idea? that's a really just like well, that's a boring design decision. Like what? Why are we doing that? And then deciding to make that around about 80% of fights you experience in the game. That is a bewildering decision. But I really like the writing. We said the best characters. It's got a really good soundtrack as well. That's really good music on there, and I really like the world of Final Fantasy X. It's between that and Final Fantasy VII in terms of the worlds. I just think that there's some like really gorgeous world building, and I really like what they do. I talk about it a lot. I don't necessarily want to go into things here because not everyone will have played it and spoilers, but there's the arc of Yuna. It's just actually like quite cleverly written. Like it's a yeah. The arc, I suppose you'd say, the combined arc of Tidus and Yuna. It's yeah. Some of the areas of it are A, batshit crazy, and B, not really very necessary. And it does, like, it kind of, Final Fantasy X is the last one for me where you can feel like, I don't know who was responsible for the writing, but you can feel the Squaresoft storytelling in there. After that, it kind of, there isn't really another point where that comes in. It seems to fall down this Enix line of the storytelling, you know, being a bit of an inconvenience, or like just diving into it but with no understanding of how or why to tell a story. So yeah, I did play it over lockdown, and it wasn't, the story wasn't as good as I remembered. Like, I played Final Fantasy VII over lockdown. Yeah, Final Fantasy VII, some of the bits of the story were not as hot as they had been back in the day, sure, but it was noticeable in Final Fantasy X that, like, I think my mind, particularly because of my personal situation at that point, my mind had inferred or extrapolated and created things that weren't there. I thought there was a lot more, like, I remembered there being a lot more going on with Lulu, particularly, that just wasn't there. And then, like, the relationship and stuff, like what's going on with Tidus is not as I remember it. Also, some of the fights in it, like, the Final Fantasy X has got, like, a real problem with you could arguably throw this at any of the Final Fantasies that I'm aware of, at least, but I feel like it's most noticeable on 10, where your fights are not reactive. Like, when you like there's like a dragon that you fight in the air, particularly, and the Yunalesca fight at the end. Like, there is a set order that you input your actions in, and woe betide you if you step off that path. You just have to stay on that path, and like, and the Yunalesca fight particularly is one that, like, I got killed on it multiple times, where I stopped playing over lockdown because I was just like, can I squeeze in just another attack just to make this less painful, because it's going to take hours otherwise. The game was like, just slap me down. Nope, you have got to take these actions in this order and just do that repeatedly. So its combat is, like I used to say back in the day, like the trash fights were not bad, but the the trash fights were terrible, but the boss fights were not bad. The boss fights are pretty dreadful as well. But it has a lot of feel-good stuff in it. The story's good, the weapon's good. I really liked the introduction of Overflow. I think Overflow is just superb. most of the mini games in the Final Fantasy series tend to be as Marmite as the Final Fantasy series themselves. I really like Blitzball. I can play Blitzball all day long, but I recognise that is not for everyone. Where would I put it? Or where would I find it first? There you are. It is obviously not top tier, and I don't think it's that either. I think that 10. I really like what it does with a lot of its storytelling. I think some of the art direction on it's really nice as well, and the soundtrack's just so killer. And that pulls. I can't in good faith play something that I would so readily want to play in a genre with stuff that I just like. I'm sort of here by acknowledgement. I'm really not even sure about Darkest Dungeon being there. Like if the C genre, if the C tier were to cease to exist, these things going down, not up. But yeah, that's Final Fantasy X. So, Fallout 3. When I played Fallout 1 back in the days, before even Fallout 2 comes out, I said to my friend, wouldn't it be cool if they did like a first-person shooter in the Fallout world? And you could really, like, because like we had like the plasma rifle particularly was the thing that set this off of like, okay, well, I imagine how good that would be. And in a sense, Bethesda gave us that. They say, okay, well, we'll do a 3D Fallout. And that did scratch a certain itch. That was there. You know, I played and completed Fallout 3. Fallout 3 is and will always be more of an Elder Scrolls game than it ever is a Fallout game. I like it. It just, to me, I'm playing a Fallout. I'm playing an Elder Scrolls, Oblivion specifically, skin. This is like most of the time when you're playing Fallout, unless you are doing a very specific art or role-playing run. Most of the time in Fallout 3, New Vegas, I can't say for the later ones, but I assume it's going to be exactly the same given how Skyrim was. You know, you'll spend most of your life searching through containers and managing your inventory. And then the rest of it, you'll spend trudging through various shades of brown. The combat I mean, like the way the VAT system went in was, I mean, it's there, but it's not. You're not really like, and the thing is with Fallout 3 as well that like it doesn't. Like maybe Fallout 3 would have been better if it kind of like wholly abandoned its pretensions of being an RPG, because the best bits in it, like the super duper mutants, or whatever they're called, so like not you've got like regular mutants and then you've got like the big boys, like those big boy fights. Like I'll give Fallout 3 that was good, you know. But like searching through the containers and just like, and a lot of like all the it's got like the whole special system and like, oh, it's got perks and it's got things and that, but it's just not, they're meaningless because they don't fit in with the world of an Elder Scrolls game, which is what Fallout 3 is. And like when you look at, like, for example, like what probably the finest thing in Fallout 1 and 2, I would argue, there's a lot to talk about that's great in them, but probably the finest thing is like the way that dialogue is handled, the way that quests are complicated and have these, you know, different outcomes, and if you piss people off, then that's it, it's over, you know, and like that just wasn't there in Fallout 3. Like they like just and why would you expect it to be there? Because like Bethesda have never been good at that. I mean, it is a very like when we talk about. I mean, this on here. I'm not going to give away too many spoilers about how I feel about these things, but like when you compare Fallout 3 to Baldur's Gate 3, I mean, there's a lot of similarities in the way that they've strapped it on to the engine they knew, rather than staying truthful. But I just feel that there's a real cynicism about the Bethesda one. I just, yeah. Lots of people really enjoyed it. I mean, I didn't. But, I'm not the master of what everyone can like. Where would I put it? I didn't enjoy it as much as Morrowind. I did definitely enjoy it more than Dragon Quest 7, which is the clue. So it goes into this sort of the wishy-washy brown thing of D. Like, it's worth pointing out, by the way, that we're rating all these games. Hopefully, the vast majority of these are good games. Like I say, I mean, like I'm looking at Fell Seal particularly, and it's like a D. Is it like, these are how I rank the games that I play. But I tell you what, you go shopping out there, you'll find a hell of a lot worse RPGs than Final Fantasy X. Well, you'll find a hell of a lot worse RPGs than Might and Magic 8. There is a lot of trash out there. It's not, this is the worst RPG, this is the best RPG. It's like, who is the best of the best, is what we're going for here. But it's not Fallout 3. Yeah, so, Marmite. Final Fantasy VIII was, like, the first thing to say about Final Fantasy VIII is, like, I'm amazed how Squaresoft managed to release in such quick succession so many, like, AAA, as they were back in the day, role-playing games. Because I'm pretty sure like Final Fantasy VII was released in like 97, Final Fantasy VIII in 98, and Final Fantasy IX in 99. I'm sure it's something ridiculous like that they were outputting one of these a year. Like, that is an achievement. And you wonder how the writing process and the game design for that went. Because they've all three of them got quite different combat and leveling systems. They've got their own stories, and yet with Final Fantasy VIII, the protagonist of Final Fantasy VIII feels like Final Fantasy VII had been successful, and they thought, well, why was Final Fantasy VII successful? It's like because it had an incredibly angsty protagonist. And they're like, well, okay, well, what if we make this next one even more angsty? Perhaps they'll love that even more. And some people did. Some people not being me. I think Squall Lionheart is like the most detestable protagonist of that. Squall Lionheart versus Byleth. There's a question. I suppose Squall Lionheart on all routes is worse. What you've got with Final Fantasy VIII, you've got it's not just Squall. There's a series of dislikable characters. Rinoa did my head in. Cypher, I guess maybe you're not supposed to like. Zell. Yeah. Not great. And then you've got like I guess So there's the thing with graphics on this, and like graphics which are married to art direction. Um, the graphics in Final Fantasy VII were, I would describe them as being vibrant and quite clear. We're talking about sort of big pixels and big polygons, and very expressive with very little. This Lego character style, Lego as it was then rather than now, but like this simplified style of just making expressive builds with that. And then Final Fantasy VIII sort of scales up the models, and it just like, because of the capabilities of the PlayStation, like they just looked really, really pixelated. Now, remasters, I've said it before, say it again, I'm generally against remasters. Let things stay in the space that they were there for, or else the animation starts to look ridiculous if you upscale the vectors, like so, or the resolution, and the Final Fantasy VIII remaster, which I've not played. I've played the PlayStation original. But what I've seen of it, it looks an absolute horror show, because you've got this whole like mixed resolution thing that's just there. But even at the time, like Final Fantasy VIII didn't look anywhere near as good as 7, and that's kind of more of an art direction thing. It's a bit weird that there's like, in 7 there's more low lighting, so there's like less vibrant colours in that sense, and yet Final Fantasy VII Final Fantasy VIII just feels so grey. I don't know how much of that is like the menu system, why they pivoted from blue to grey. I had no idea. And like I think they stuck with that into 9. It's just like why grey? Like why have who sat down and thought, like, do you know what our game needs? More grey. And like, will it make it easier to read? What, white on grey? Like, it's just bonkers decision. And then you've got this combat system where like you by the way, if you haven't already guessed, this is coming in pretty low because the moaning is not going to stop, and I'm not going to come round at the end on this. You've got this combat system where everything apart from bosses, hard level scales, so everything is your level, so all fights carry the same amount of peril apart from the boss fights. And then you've got the junction system, which in and of itself is kind of good in a way, were it not accompanied by the draw system, where you just have to like get into these trash fights, spam draw, so you've got enough of these things that you can put them in the junction system. And so you end up grinding from day one, but without really seeing any appreciable benefit until you do, at which point you just leap up in power. Not like that was bad. And then the final nail in the coffin for me with Final Fantasy VIII is the fact that, like, while, and I'd mentioned it earlier with Final Fantasy VII, I really like this like sort of non-temporal like storytelling, or temporal storytelling, I guess you'd call it in that sense, like that you are exploring different parts of the life and doing that through flashbacks. It's okay, but you have to be a little bit careful about overusing them, particularly if you're going to hand play a control of them. And like the first rule of the flashback is don't introduce them too early. Like you need to get people invested in the game by playing the game before you can do an extended flashback sequence. And like the next rule is to make sure that, because this was true of everything from like The Witcher 3 when you play as Ciri, or Final Fantasy 7. Like when you're handling a player character in a flashback, in a role-playing game where it's about these incremental bonuses, fighting has no reward. Finding items has no reward, because you're not then getting in possession of this thing. So you need to be careful about that, because you're gonna, like, especially if you're doing an extended one, like there's no, it's a rewardless section. People want to get back playing their character, who they are growing, where they're making the numbers go up. And then the third and final rule of the flashback is, if you're going to have a flashback, I call it a flashback, I don't know if it's quite the word in Final Fantasy VIII, because I did not complete this by a long way. If you're going to have a flashback, then just make sure that the character in the flashback is somebody that the audience likes and can relate to, and isn't a useless simpering cunt like fucking Laguna is, or whatever his bloody name was. It just utterly insufferable guy who I'm forced to control. Yeah. So the question is these two. And I want to put it in G. I really do. But Final Fantasy X-2 is just so bad that it's going there. Where we go next? There's some big names still up there. And some less big ones. The original dungeon crawl, Diablo 1. I think so. Diablo 1, and there's a few other games that are hidden in this list. Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance is there, and Secret of Mana. They're games where you I think they're really designed to be played multiplayer. I don't think anybody sat down and made Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance and thought, well, somebody's going to play this single player on their own. And like Diablo had, you could play Diablo, I want to say I'm correct in this, over a network and over the internet. Possibly be like a direct IP connection back. I can't. This was from like 95 or 96 or something. It was ages ago. And that might have given the game a completely different dimension. As it was, walk into a room, aggro everything, walk out of a room, stand in the doorway, and just repeatedly click in the doorway while picking up very little loot in dungeons that are all like procedurally generated, which might sound interesting, but believe you me, it isn't. On the basis of that mechanic, like no characters, like essentially no story, just all this random trudge through stuff, waiting in doorways, clicking on a monster in a doorway, leaving when you've got bags full of loot, going and selling the loot, coming back down to the dungeon. It was just like really reductionist, rat in a cage, like gameplay. But it looked really cool and it had a good feel. Like the walking around felt solid, I suppose, and like it felt at the time very modern. And it might have been back in the day that, like, as I say, the multiplayer might have been fantastic. I've got to rate this as a single player experience. That's the experience I had. Bored to tears. Like I find it honestly astonishing that a game, I'm assuming it's going to be on here, yes, which is a Diablo. I find it fascinating that a game like, it's interesting, isn't it, that like there's so little going on, and yet it didn't annoy me like these two do, because it doesn't do anything, whereas these two get things wrong. These two have got like more bad ideas than they've got good ideas. Diablo just doesn't have any ideas. For a lot of people, I think it really picks up with the second Diablo. I think that's where people have spoken more highly of it. But I mean, it's just kind of like cookie clicker games, you know. Well, that is anyway. I don't know. So, never played it. Not likely to do so anytime soon. I didn't like it. I didn't like it. It was more Morrowind with sharper textures, but like not with sharper textures, but without being like any more, or rather any less wooden than Morrowind was. And it just seemed like exactly the same game as Morrowind. The only difference being that you now had, we can have a conversation on this, because you know there's a lot to be said about it. Obviously, I'll do all the talking. But you know, feel free. You know, if you've got opinions on this, post in the comments. Like, this is something that's worth having an opinion over. It had a difficulty slider that you could turn up and down at any time, and the difficulty slider would affect, like, I mean, probably amongst other things, but like very noticeably and directly, how much damage you would do and how much damage the enemies would do. And if you turned the difficulty slider right down, you could one-shot anything. If you turned it right up, then like you essentially would have to plink away at something for, you know, God knows however many hours. And I just couldn't get my head around why anybody would think that was good design. And I've heard Tim Kaine say recently that he thinks that there should be you know, Fallout, to be fair, does have a like a difficulty setting that you can up and down, and you can change that at any point. I have never touched it in my life, but it's there. And Tim Kaine believes in that, and Tim Kaine knows more about game design than I do. And I think that there is perhaps the question of, you know, we've started to have a look now and think about like what about games being accessible, you know, and like, I mean that in the sense of like, if you've got like some form of like, you know, disability, then should you be gatekept from playing games that you might otherwise enjoy? And you know, this is it's a fascinating question, and I think that there needs to be a very nuanced and careful response to it. There's been a few games, I think about things like Celeste, and I think The Last of Us 2 had this, where you can completely customize your experience because, you know, they're not there to lock anyone out from their games. And I think in Celeste's case, that feels a little less profit hungry than it does maybe with The Last of Us, which is, you know, it's coming from a slightly different corporate background. But, you know, there is something to be said, you know, like, I wouldn't, I wouldn't stop somebody from building a bloody wheelchair ramp in front of a bakery. I wouldn't describe having to go up a staircase as being integral to my cinema experience. But is that the same with gaming? Like, some of the best games in the last 15 years I absolutely love are the From Software games. But I haven't actually really played many of them. I watch other people play. It comes back to that, 10 hours of, it takes you 10 hours to get good before you get into it. And like, I can't be asked within 10 hours. So I'll let somebody else, possibly one of my viewers, play Bloodborne, and then I'll watch them and I'll enjoy that vicariously. But then again, am I making a choice? But then again, like, as is, yeah, is it? I mean, like, it's easier for me when you're choosing to do something like that than when you're like, prevented from doing something like that. But on the other hand, with things like this, like, some people, it sounds awful, but like, some people are always going to be better at some things than other people. I guess, like, to what extent, like, it's how you view the lens of disability. I don't have a right to play Dark Souls 2 on a Guitar Hero controller and win. That's something that's a very, somebody has got the specific dexterity to do that, a dexterity of which I will not have. The question, I suppose, there is whether you believe that it is, I have the potential to develop that, and whether or not, folks who might have other, things with, that might mean that potential is much harder to reach. I still think, like, with this, and it is a difficult one, that, like, I think there has to be, when you start having blind, like, accessibility laws in art, like, art shouldn't be for everybody, and video games should be art. So sometimes I think you can just weigh it up in your games. Like, an example to me, like in FTL and a lot of games, FTL's got a colorblind mode. Like, because being able to tell whether something is red or green has absolutely no bearing on the designed experience for FTL. It's not a who can see red and green best game. Whereas, like, Dark Souls, that is part of the design experience, is it being dexterously challenging. And I think you do have to give a bit of space to let things like that breathe. But this is one of those things where, like, I've got a constantly evolving opinion on that. My mind is ready to be changed. I don't want to plant a flag in the sand over that, because it's a complex issue, and I think if you ever take a stance on that and say, no, I think that games should just be art and that's it, and you shouldn't have to cater to that, then you don't end up with FTL's colorblind mode. So I think the conversation has to stay open. But with that said, I don't understand what it means for Oblivion. Like, I don't understand, like, why, like I've just got a slider that means I win or not, that has infinitely more bearing on the combat than me. And for that reason, aside from the fact that it's just like a Morrowind upscale skin with all the problems Morrowind had, but no real new invention for it, I am going to struggle to find it because it's in here and I can't remember. There we go. It's alphabetical, but it kind of isn't. So it's not as good as Morrowind. I'm not even going to put it there. I'm going to put it down here. I really like. I think Morrowind at least felt like it was doing something new in scale and scope. I just was Oblivion. Like, yeah. Hopefully that made a few people salty. What's next? And how long are we getting here? Oh, I think this is the last one, and then we'll maybe return to this later. Oh, yes. Yes, Wasteland 2. In Exile Games. There's Wasteland in the original on there. Wasteland was the game that is generally credited as inspiring Fallout, which is a bit reductionist because there's like, I'm sure like Tim Kaine got his inspiration from, or to say Tim Kaine, Leonard Bioski, I think his name is, the art director, they got their inspiration from lots of different sources. But the original Wasteland was, like a late 80s, early 90s, really old school RPG. Like, and basically, yeah, Fallout came out about, I don't know, like 7-8 years afterwards, and reinvented it. And then, as part of the sort of return to isometric or isometric-ish retro wave that we had with like Kickstarter, that funded things like Pillars of Eternity, that gave a platform for things like Pathfinder and Divinity Original Sin. In Exile Games, which is... Who's In Exile? There's folks from Black Isle / Interplay. I can't remember who is in it. Is it Fergus Urquhart? There's some folks from there, and so they leaned in and said like, hey, we want to make this, it'll be inspired by Wasteland, and it will also be inspired by the Fallout games a bit, but they were pretty clear, it's like mostly Wasteland, but we'll nod towards that, we'll make a kind of hybrid system. Wasteland was like a sort of squad based RPG, more like it's sort of squad based in a sort of almost kind of early Final Fantasy kind of way, rather than like an XCOM kind of way. But it's got this big open expansive map that you can obviously see inspired Fallout, and so they did this. You create a party of 6, I think, and there's all these different classes and weapons and melee and and things, and you're performing roles, and So they did this, and it got some things right, it got some things wrong. The leveling up system was generally quite good, although it was a little frustrating that I felt on my playthrough that on my very first playthrough I was able to find the seam and create a extremely powerful party who were always sort of a step ahead of the enemies on like whatever default settings were there. I think there's sometimes a school of thought with these sort of Western style RPGs that like the way to do character creation is to make the first playthrough easiest, and then like give yourself the option to do like a weird second playthrough, which is a style is okay. The problem it had with Fallout and indeed Wasteland, this Wasteland 2, was that it went for this more Fallout Tactics style. You're kind of doing it. There is a world map that you're going around, but really it's like stages. It's like levels and stages. And that was there. It wasn't necessarily all that. There wasn't always a good sense as well of like the weapon progression felt a little too steady rather than explosive. You know, you didn't find the gun runners. It's like, oh god, look at all these brilliant new guns I can buy. It was just sort of kind of like, okay, here's my next increment. I wonder if Wasteland 2, and maybe I'm misremembering this, to be fair, because a lot of this just, it was a long time ago when I played it, and you know, I get things wrong with it. I did generally enjoy it. It was generally fun, but I wonder whether or not it might have been better as either like a sort of a rogue light, you know, like you could, like your party members, you know, something a bit almost close at the Darkest Dungeon. And also at the end, it just went on. I mean, I definitely, I got through the end, and I was younger then, and more of a mentality of like, oh, I'll finish a game if I've paid full whack for it. Like now, I do that. Like it was okay. It was a good time sink. It's got some good systems. It's nowhere near as good as Wasteland, Fallout, or Fallout 2 were at their time, but there. Yeah. So where would I put it? Firstly, let me assume it's here. And I mean, I enjoyed it. I think it's more than. Yeah, I think a C. I think I would put it in the C tier. Right. Well, this has been the first of what is looking like it will be a many multiple episode thing, because there's like a lot still to cover in here. I don't think we're anywhere near halfway through yet. Have you enjoyed this? If you have, then you know, let me know, and I'll do more. Well, I'd probably do more anyway, to be honest. I've quite enjoyed it. If you have strong feelings about any of the placements of these, you know, fight the case, or the other thing with this, when we're covering so many in quick succession, if I'm wrong about something on here, if you're hearing me say something and saying that's not true, like the game didn't do X, Y, or Z, it did this, post in the comments, and I'm not just as like a lazy promotion thing, but like, you know, be genuinely interested, and you know, if I'm wrong, I'll suck that up. But I don't think I will be, but you know, keep an open mind. So anyway, thanks for watching, and yeah, I'll see you next time.